r/AskReddit by Reddical. HR employees of Reddit. What was the most ridiculous hilarious complaint you ever received? My work has one men's toilet. Had one co-worker complain that another guy kept using the bathroom before him and doing big ol' poos. But the way he said it was like this guy knew when he was about to go ninja in just before him. Dropped a massive stinker and then forced the other guy to marinate in the smell when he went for a leak afterwards. We ended up adding a can of air freshener to the bathroom. And the next complaint that came in was the poo guy never used it. I've worked in several where they install those auto air fresheners. Beforehand it smells like shit. After the fact it smells like shit rolled in cinnamon. The gold old shitrus smell when you use the lemon scented air freshener to mask the stink. 20 years in HR. 2 female employees visited me to complain that their female team member didn't wear underwear under her work pants. Did you ask them how they knew and why they cared? Dude. The lines. She wanted to lodge a complaint against a colleague who had a new TV delivered to the office instead of home. And she thought her colleague's spending money on the TV was irresponsible. How strongly did she get told to mind her own business? She was told as diplomatically as possible in HR speak to pound sand. I recently had HR tell me that one of my staff had been undersupplied in his annual leave over the past few years. And he needed to take at least 10 days off over the next 6 months to correct the leave liability. Paid at a higher rate than usual to make up for the error. Of course. He could take a 2-week block or, say, a day off a week until he'd used the leave, his choice. He was so enraged over being given extra paid holidays that he wrote to our general manager to complain. Screamed at me, his boss, I know my rights. Refused the leave or even to discuss why he wouldn't take it. Anyway, I wrote his performance review this week and there are multiple goals about professional, respectful behavior that need to be reached in order for him to get a raise this year. Yeah. Not so much. Oh. And he still has to take the 10 days off. I can actually think of a reason someone might react that way. They've been doing something illegal which would be discovered if anyone else was assigned to their job for a day. And they never got around to thinking up any way to prevent that discovery. It's one of the reasons why senior financial personnel in major corporations are effectively forced to take vacations in blocks large enough that someone else has to do their job for a few weeks. This staff member of yours might not have the same level of responsibility. But if there are any numbers or stock they're in charge of, maybe get someone to audit that while this guy's away. This was my thought as well. Oddly enough. It made me think of Rita Cruntwell, the treasurer of Dixon IL. Through a lack of internal controls she was able to steal tons of money from the small town. The largest municipal fraud ever in the US. And has been a case study for forensic accountants and auditors for a few years. HR consultant for 10+ years. You won't believe the amount of times I've had to shut people down for trying to sell their pyramid scheme side hustle in the office. Our HR got involved when an employee attempted to sell her used sports bras on the lunchroom table. She needed the money to fuel her MLM habit. What about when it's your boss? One of our bosses went to a Deepak Chopra thing and came back with a poster she put on the wall saying in one life we all wear many hats with a picture of 5 differently colored hats stacked on top of each other. Bro. Deepak. You're as deep as the ocean. Then she spent the 6 months trying to talk people into buying stuff from her, like toothpaste, jeans, all sorts of stuff. We'd be in her office on a meeting and suddenly it would segue into a sales pitch. What was particularly annoying about this was that her and her husband are well off, if not rich. He's a senior doctor. She's a head accountant. They own multiple homes but are learned trying to squeeze a bit more money out of the people who work under them. She was actually a nice person. But hell, we got tired of being asked to buy stuff from her. Not HR. But I have a story about an HR person that I will never forget. The company I worked for hired a new girl in the HR department. She was young and very enthusiastic. I'm sure this was probably her first job out of college. Cut to a week or so later. And I'm riding in the elevator on the way up to the executive floor. And she steps in with me. A couple floors later we stop. And an older gentleman wearing a polo shirt and jeans gets on. before I could greet him. She says. Pretty casual for a workday. Ha. I had to stifle my laughter when he replied with, "That's one of the benefits of owning the company." She turned an amazing color of red that I haven't seen since. It was all in good fun though. She ended up working there a long time. To be fair, if I was the owner, I'd have admired that. She's brave enough to pull someone up for dressing too casually for the job. Which means she obviously takes her job very seriously. He actually did. And was impressed by her initiative. I think she made it up to assistant director at some point. But I will never forget the utter total embarrassment. It was priceless. An employee used very derogatory terms to make fun of a customer who was in the back of the store, while talking to the customer who was at the counter, who happened to be the other customer's mother. Yikes. Did the mother call the employee out, or did you have to tell them who it was they'd been talking to? Probably one of the few times a customer could say, "Do you know who I am?" and not be a pompous a-hole with it. Was once asked to investigate a sexual harassment situation where 3 different women were coming onto a male co-worker throughout their shift. I took down the details. Got the names. Easy peasy investigation, so I thought. A week later. Nobody by these descriptions or names had ever worked for the company. I decided to talk to the gentleman again. After a lengthy conversation where things didn't quite stack up, I asked him how these women communicated with him. I shit you not. With a straight face. He looks me in the eye and replies telepathically like I'm some kind of idiot. I had never sent an employee for psychological evaluation up to that point, and I hope never to have to again. So yeah, I was asked by a delusional schizophrenic to conduct a sex harassment investigation on the voices in his head. It's all fun and games until he blurts out, "Shut up, your horses," in the middle of a meeting. Or he yells, "I am coming," then they say, "You are already here," then he answers, "I am not talking to you, I am talking to my horses." My HR department once fell for a phishing email and sent everyone's W2s to a random hacker. HR then informed everyone via a mass email, with no read receipts, at 9 PM on a Friday. Even though multiple people were on vacation and had left instructions to be called in an emergency. When I got back from my trip a week later and expressed my concern about her not actually notifying me about this, she totally brushed it off. I said, "Do you realize that I need to freeze my credit? And I'm 7 days late in doing so?" She said, "No. Don't freeze your credit. You won't be able to use your credit cards if you do." Another time, during a workers' comp claim, I needed to speak to our claims adjuster, and she said an adjuster doesn't get assigned until after the claim is settled. That's the exact opposite of how that works. She was my stupid complaint. That is terrible. Did anything end up happening with your credit? It's still frozen. 2+ years later. I unfreeze it when I need to open an account and refreeze it after. I was a manager and had to call our HR in on this one. We had a computer that was used by multiple people, and a couple of girls complained that it had a virus and porn was always popping up when they turned it on in the morning. I decided to have a look, see if someone was ducking around on the closing shift, so I looked at the security footage, and lo and behold, one of the supervisors was watching porn and jerking off. When we called him in, he didn't deny it but said technically he didn't pull his dong out, he just played with it in his pants, so it's not really that bad. The HR guy just looked at him, didn't say a word until after what seemed like forever the jerker said, "So I guess I'm fired," and then walked out. Edit. A word. Smart response on the HR guy's part. Yay, he didn't really have to be a jerk. My partner is in HR. Someone took a shit on the job site. He was given a photo complete with measurements. The people that complained wanted DNA testing done. He's still not sure why they measured it. So they can match the projectile with the butthole that fired it. Obviously. Everyone will have to fire one into a water tank as not to disturb any markings. They really need a positive match. I told my co-worker as professionally as I could that it wasn't appropriate for her to be using her phone while at work. Teaching kids, supposedly. She spent all her time on Facebook. Little kids would be screaming and wailing on each other literally 10 feet away, and she was totally oblivious. She complained by email to HR that I was rude and confrontational. They pulled me aside and told me to be more careful about how I spoke to co-workers. I told them my side of the story. They spoke to her again. She got a written warning. They didn't tell me what happened, but I gather from office gossip that she lost her shit and started shouting at the HR staff. Rude and confrontational perhaps? Anyway, she's on her final warning now and she has a habit of hitting on the married dads of our kids. Involving children in adult matters. Why hasn't your mummy paid your fees yet? Don't you want to come to daycare? And generally being an unprofessional self-absorbed pitasso. Can't wait until she gets fired. Why hasn't your mummy paid your fees yet? Don't you want to come to daycare? Holy shit, I accidentally hit report under your comment when I read this. Because my mind was just going report. Yep. That's emotional manipulation. This beach is clueless and harmful. You wouldn't believe the headaches that I received when management signed a new copier/printer lease which reduced the overall number of printers in exchange for centrally located multiplex copiers. Evidently, people feel their social standing is signified by if they have a printer, or two, in their office. My favorite was an executive assistant who stated that because she wears heels to work she couldn't walk to the new copier and requested that a reasonable accommodation would be to replace the printer she had in her office. IT person here. The amount of people that have printer envy is astounding. And if they have color printing and someone else doesn't. Oh man, suddenly I have a job function that requires it as well. Always seems to be the people over 45ish that care so much. I'm upset that I don't have a fax machine printer in my office and I have to share with everyone else. I print signed fax PDF documents all day for our legal department. I need one in my office but I have to use the shared one that no one else really uses except to print personal shit. I'm like 3/4 that age. We had a complaint that the toilet roll holders were too low in the stalls because when a guy was taken up his knees were hitting the holders. We then lifted all the stalls toilet roll holders 8 inches on whole company site so no knees would hit the toilet roll holders. No complaints since. HR working for the people. My arms are short and the toilet paper holder is too far. I keep falling off my seat. HR. A woman claimed that people were spreading rumors about her sleeping with co-workers. The investigation wasn't even done yet when she moved in with one of the guys. The others showed me texts and nude pics she had sent them. And if that wasn't enough, she followed me home from the bar one night to make sure I was okay. I shut my door in her face and the next day said I was too drunk and didn't realize she was there. Had enough from everything else. I didn't even need to bring that part into the conversation with her supervisor. I worked in HR and my co-worker hated me. She wanted someone else to get the job I did and she would complain about me to management for anything. The final straw for everyone was when I sneezed and she slammed her keyboard on her desk. Basically ran out of the room and didn't come back for 30 minutes. Management called me in and said I was making too much noise. I told them I sneezed and they said she would complain about me every day, so they didn't believe her but had to make it look like they were doing something. She left shortly after. What a nutcase. I have hours of stories. Worked with her for almost 5 years. She absolutely hated me. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.